Good evening. I'm Armando Cuellar, President of the Weslaco ISD Board of Trustees. This board workshop is being conducted pursuant to the Open Meetings Act. Notice of this meeting has been posted online for at least 72 hours. The board is meeting by the use of Google Meets and telephone transmission, which allows two-way communication for members of the public during public comments. A recording of this meeting is being made and will be available to the public at a later date. The time now is 5:42, and I call this workshop to order. I'll now begin the roll call. When I call your name, each trustee will signify their presence by saying, "Here or present." Mr. Isidoro Nieto.
Present.
Mrs. Jackie Sustaita.
Present.
Coach Jesse Trevino. Dr. Jaime Rodriguez. Mr. Mark de los Santos. Mr. Andrew Gonzalez. Myself, Armando Cuellar. Let the record reflect that we have enough board members present. We don't need a quorum for a board workshop, so we will continue. Item 3, public comments.
There are none.
Item 4, discussion and description of specified WISD board policy and review of district practices. Dr. Valdez.
President Cuellar, members of the board, and members of the audience, today we're going to review specific WISD board policy and also review of the district practices that align to the specified board policies that trustees requested that we review today. Before we get started on the specific board policies, I'd like to just build some background knowledge for the audience and our viewing audience. The first is the Texas Association of School Boards, also known as TASB, provides us some context on what the duties are of school boards. And so this slide indicates what do school boards do, and you have some bulleted items there. So one of their duties is to ensure creation of a vision and goals for the district and evaluate district success. The second one, and I circled that one, says adopt policies that inform district actions, and that's what we're here today to do, is we're going to review specific policies that the board has adopted to make sure that district practices match to the policies. Also, school boards hire a superintendent, they approve an annual budget consistent with the district vision, and they communicate the district's vision and success to the community. So basically, those are the duties and responsibilities of a school board. TASB also notes, as far as the adoption of policies and review for effectiveness, they mention that a key responsibility of the board is to adopt local policies that guide how the district operates. And so your administration and district staff make important decisions based on district policies. Now, local school boards must adopt policies that are consistent with federal and state laws and regulations and should ensure they match district practices, and that's why we're here this evening to do just that. I do want to let everyone know that whenever you review a district's school board policy, you're going to see that some policies in parentheses mention legal. And those are legal policies that are mandated by state and federal law. Those do not get revised by local school boards. The ones that can be revised and adopted at the board's discretion are those in parentheses with local next to them. So by distinguishing these two, the legal and the local, the board and the public can clearly see what part of district operations are mandated by state and federal law and which are adopted at the board's discretion. And finally, TASB also notes about school board policy. They state policies define the purposes and prescribe in general terms. They create a framework within which the superintendent and other district staff can discharge their assigned duties. Policy is one way the board communicates what it wants of administration. Policies should clearly define what the board intends or requires, leaving the how of implementation administration to the superintendent or their designee. So now we're going to review the specific or specified board policy that were requested from trustees to review today. And so the first one is CE local. So you see in parentheses, local annual operating budget. And the CE local in the section fiscal year, the current board policy for Weslaco ISD stipulates the district shall operate on a fiscal year beginning September 1 and ending August 31st. And recently, as a matter of fact, we are still in transition to the new fiscal year. So the fiscal year has been changed to reflect the recent change. The revision is as follows. The district shall operate on a fiscal year beginning July 1 and ending June 30th. TASB has reviewed policy, and it will be presented to the board for consideration of approval at the March 9th, 2022 board meeting.
Didn't we have a meeting already where we already approved the new fiscal year?
We have had, where it was
We
board
already-
approved, it's just changing it, it's updating the board policy CE local.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was the question on this policy. What you can't see on here is, of course, on the bottom, it has the date that it was last updated, and it's not on here. But we had already approved it, right? So then TASB just hasn't gotten notice, or like, why isn't it
We had
updated
not-
yet?
We had not notified TASB. I notified TA, but not TASB.
Okay, because I know that when we've done revisions to policies, it doesn't take, that long.
Correct.
So-
And we had it, like Dr. Valdez said, we're in transition. If we were to change it now, we'll still not be in compliance to that, because it begins with July 1 to June 30 of the following year. Right now, we're September 1 to June 30. We're on a 10-month transition, which would not apply with either one of those two. But now I have not notified TASB.
Okay,
So this transition is for this coming July.
Right, so July 1, they'll kick in with that.
Correct.
And Mr.
Yes.
Dr. Garcia has notified TASB already.
so, and then it'll say updated July, whatever, for the new.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, so TASB has been notified, and they have provided the language, which is noted there, and it'll be brought to you
Okay.
next week. The next policy is FOC legal. So this is a state mandate, state law on student discipline, particularly in reference to placement in a disciplinary alternative education setting. And just want to note that policy is adopted from TASB. WISD does not have a FOC local policy. And just so everyone knows that the designee is the campus behavior coordinator. On the next slide, I do want to note and bring to everyone's attention that it is stipulated in the 2021-2022 WISD Student Code of Conduct, and it references the length of placement. It is on a case-by-case basis on the duration of the student's placement. The campus behavior coordinator is the one that determines the duration of the student's placement in a DAEP. And of course, the student's placement shall be determined based on the seriousness of the offense, the student's age, grade level, the frequency of misconduct, the student's attitude and statutory requirements. The maximum period of DAEP placement shall be 1 calendar year, or the maximum, that is. And so that is the policy on legal as far as DAEP.
Dr. Valdez, oh, excuse
Go
me.
ahead.
We have a behavior coordinator at each campus, correct?
Yes, sir. Every campus has a campus behavior coordinator.
The issue with this, and I'm just going to go ahead and just say this because I did bring up, I would like to talk about the policies because I believe that a policy-driven board, that's what we do. We look at policy, are we following it, are we not? What do we have to revise to respond to the needs of our district. This is what we have to do. And so just, these are a couple that caught my attention because in class, this is what I have to do every week and look through them. And I was literally reading through every single one. But what caught my attention on this one is the words, in the student code of conduct, there are guidelines. But I looked in the student code of conduct, and we don't have guidelines in our student code of conduct. And that's the problem with this policy that I identified, that yes, we have a, like you said, a designee, but the problem is the term that the kids are at DAEP should be listed, or some kind of guidelines should be in the student code of conduct, and they are not in there. So it's just left to kind of like, well, the principal here says this and that principal says that, and it's to everybody's opinion. We don't have the guidelines set in the student code of conduct. So that's where we have to go back to the student code of conduct and revise and add the guidelines that we need there.
Yes, the student code of conduct is also taken from TASB.
Correct.
So that's taken from their model.
And I know that we looked over it
Yeah.
earlier this year, and what did we have to add, and what did we, it's board not adopted, we don't make it, like you said. We just, yes, this is what it is. But we
this
can
is-
add and take away and do things that we need to, correct?
That's correct. And sometimes you can either have it as administrative practices in a district, you have your board policy, you can have board regulations. Board regulations are not adopted by the board. Those are designed, executed, and implemented by district administration.
Right.
They can be listed in the board, in board policy, but they're board regulations. You can also have administrative practices where that's noted. But we can research on whether, with TASB, we can research whether we would stipulate in the student code of conduct the guidelines. But we do have those guidelines are established through Dr. Sergio Garcia's office as far as placement, duration, and that goes through Assistant Superintendent for Administration and Support Services.
If I read the sentence, if I may, it says, if the period of placement is inconsistent with the guidelines in the student code of conduct. So what that's implying is you guys have them in your student code of conduct, but we don't.
All I can tell you is that in reviewing that, and I went ahead and called TASB and asked them specifically that question. I'm not sure if what you're asking, if we can put the specific, because what we do is we follow the chapter 37, right? We get a guide and it'll say for this infraction, it's going to be this, but they never ever give us any, and I understand your point. You're saying that the guidelines that it talks about, it's not in the student code of conduct. That's what you're saying. So, are we talking about guidelines as far as days, amount of days, or?
Well, it says here, the way I'm reading it on the legal policy, if the period of placement is inconsistent with the guidelines, so let's say a kid gets, in trouble for drugs, that's 10 days. If a kid gets in trouble for skipping, that's 5 days. It has to come with a consequence, correct? Isn't
Right.
that what a guideline is? Well, that's what
Right.
I'm saying. There are no guidelines in the
Yeah.
student code of conduct.
We're not given any direction from TASB as far as how many days are going to get.
Right.
That's pretty much left up to the behavior coordinator, okay?
Right.
And so I did check with other districts. It's not, I just didn't do it this time. We're always, talking to the other, my counterparts at the other districts. As a matter of fact, I talked to one of them today, and I asked him specifically, these guidelines, and he said the same thing as far as we adopt the student code of conduct based on what the state sends us. Now, we can be more specific if we want to add that on there. As far as the guidelines are concerned, we can do that. I think what happens a lot of times is that, since there's a lot of flexibility, we're just concerned about putting something specific, and then that's going to bring about some more concerns with parents. So,
And actually, what brought this up is concerns with parents. This is why I focused on this policy, because there are concerns about this. And we need to have a better, the way we structure the behavior whatever we're responding to, the plans, because there are problems.
A more consistent.
Consistency, that's
Consistent where-
the importance.
You know, I know there's a student, and this is just an example, there's a student over at Weslaco East that gets caught for vaping, and he's thrown in at Horton for 35, whatever the limit is, 30 days. And then we have one at the other school, at High, gets caught, and he serves 15 days. So
Right.
that's where the inconsistencies come in, and what are we really showing the students? I mean, it's happened.
Well,
I don't know, obviously, to
Yeah.
those
And I totally
exact
understand.
details.
As a matter of fact, when I first started doing that, I started checking into other districts, 6, 7 years ago. Because in my mind, I said, okay, well, how many days is it for this, and this? But then if we go back to to this part right here, and the reason why there's so much flexibility is because of this statement right there. The duration of the student's placement shall be determined on a case-by-case basis, very specific.
Well,
on
yes,
seriousness.
I understand that, Doctor, but if they both commit the same crime, and one's serving 30 days and the other one's serving 15, well, there's obviously something wrong there. It's not,
Yeah, but they also look at the other things like it says there. So I don't, okay, so just so that, and I'm not sure how much you know about the way that we do it here, and then, of course, the way they do it in other districts. So the principals recommend, they'll send me their placement request and say, my job is just to make sure that they are following the Chapter 37 guideline that says, for this incident, it's going to be either a discretionary or a mandatory. We are left to decide how many days, okay? And then on that, it says, you're going to take each student on a case-by-case basis, and you're going to look at all these things: seriousness of the offense, the student's age and grade level, the frequency of the misconduct, the student's attitude, which to me is very, very vague,
Yeah.
and also, of course, the statutory requirements, which we make sure we follow. We can be more specific,
I
if that's
just would
what.
like
And
to see
that's-
it straight across the board.
That's the beauty that I tell everybody of a school board is this is the legal policy, but we have the flexibility as a governmental body to make our own local policies to respond to our needs of our district. So just because they're giving us the flexibility doesn't mean, well, you guys, it's just here. No, we have the ability to make the local policy and stipulate exactly what it is, because that's what we're supposed to do.
And I will add, as far as, since vaping was brought up, right, and it's a concern throughout our country on the increase of that with our adolescents. But I will tell you that every case is different. So in the cases that were reported to you, I don't know of the specifics, how specific the parent or the individual who communicated was, because you can have different scenarios. You can have a student who was in the possession of a vape pen that is not labeled with anything, and there is no admission by the student. You can have another case where you can have a vape pen that is labeled THC, and there is admission of by the student. You have very different scenarios that come into play. And you can have even where you have a vape pen that's labeled THC, there's no admission, and we have to send it off to DPS for testing. So you have very different scenarios that come into play. And so an example would be that if there's no admission, there's no labeling, it's an e-cigarette, that's what a vape pen is, and we have to send it off for DPS for testing, that's going to be a DAP placement. And in some cases where there is admission and it's labeled THC, the student, and it's a child, the student has admitted to it, then JJAEP, right? And so you have very different cases that come into play. You just have to the parent needs to be very specific. And so to be fair and consistent depends on each case, right? And the duration of their stay. But the recommendations do come from the principals and the campus behavior coordinator as far as placement and also in the removal, the exiting of the placement.
So, but I think, you know, your observations are well taken, and I can continue to research with TASB and ask them, you know, I think, because this is legal policy, right?
It's
So we can't
legal.
change that.
Right.
But
Yeah,
as
we don't
far
wanna
as the
change
student code of conduct, you know, we might have flexibility for that, so I can investigate that and see if that's something that,
Yes.
that you all
Yeah,
would
we're
want
not
us
trying
do.
to change, we can't change legal policy,
Right.
we know that. But
Exactly.
what we can do is make our local policies. And like Dr. Valdez said, there's different scenarios, but they all fall into a certain category. You know,
Right.
they all are gonna fall somewhere. And wherever you fall, that's where it is. It has to be consistent.
So what I did at the very beginning, which I thought I was doing, you know, something great, and then I turned out that they said, no, you can't do that. So what you're talking about in this, the chapter 37 chart that we have, you know, it has the infraction and then it has the recommendation, whether it's going to be discretionary placement or mandatory placement or discretionary expulsion or mandatory expulsion. So what I started to do is started to put days on it. Okay, for this, it's going to be this many days. And I checked with other districts and they said, well, the only reason that you can't do that is because of the flexibility that gives you here. Okay, so I don't know if I'm explaining myself. The fact that, you know, it says the duration of the student's placement in the AEP is going to be determined by each behavior coordinator. Because trust me, there's a lot of disagreement, you know, with the behavior. We have a behavior coordinator for each campus. And then, of course, the principals also work with the behavior coordinators because they just want to make sure that, you know, we are also being fair and consistent. So even they disagree with some of these things. You know, so at one point, I think we were going to have a meeting with the three principals because most of these cases are, you know, most of the cases in middle school are usually discretionary, you know, misbehavior. So I was going to meet with the principals, but, you know, Dr. Gamboa said, well, so many days, and, you know, Ms. Morales said so many days, but Mr. Zamora said, you know, no, I want them there the whole 45 days and stuff like that.
That's exactly what that you got to the meat of the problem here. That's the problem. That 3 different kids at 3 different high schools can have the same problem, but we're going to give them different consequences. So
Right.
the consistency isn't between case to case. The consistency is between the schools.
Right.
That we're doing the same, that we're being consistent with our kids with the same type of issue that they had.
Right. So one of the other things that and I'm sure, I think you reported to the board now that one of the things that we do, if I'm going to be the one who's guiding you on the placement to make sure that we're in line with chapter 37, then I am going to have also the responsibility to make sure that I review all your early releases
The exits.
to make sure that, you know,
Right.
and, you know, and then we follow the plan. There's a certain plan that they have to follow once they're exited. When they go back, this is my exit plan that the counselors have to review with, you know, and the social workers have to review with each individual student. So now, you know, I'm reviewing each one of the exit requests, telling them, okay, you know, are you sure that this is the right, you know, decision for this individual student? You know, but I can, you know, continue to research it and talk to TASB, and look at what are the, you know, what some of the things that we can do for that. So,
Yeah.
At least to have it in student code of conduct.
Yeah, well, just, you know, my observation to this whole thing is the word consistency is being brought up, you know, very often, and the bottom line is, you know, to do something like this is not okay. There's not going to be a variation on what the consequences are going to be. Bottom line is just don't do it. I think that's what we want to get at for consistency.
absolutely. You know, this thing with.
You know, because
trust
where do
me,
you draw the line? Well, you know, it's only this. No. Period. It's not okay.
I think if it's just, like you mentioned, Mr. Cuer, a consistency for every case, you know, and depending on the situation, as long as it's consistent, then everybody will be okay with it.
What's going to help us is that the school resource officers, which are law enforcement, will in the near future receive field testing kits. So they will be able to determine, evaluate the substance, the oil, whatever it is, and determine whether it is, if it contains THC, they're on the spot. So they'll be able to make that determination. Law enforcement has not had the field testing kits, but they're being purchased, I was informed last week that they're in the process of getting those to us. So that will remedy the inconsistency on case by case. It'll be tested right then and there.
And I totally agree with you, Mr. Staita, as far as the parents are concerned, because I get those calls all the time. As far as the, the placements and the exits and all that. So, and so I do get the calls, and trust me, I'd like to say, yes, you know what, sorry, 45 days is 45 days.
Correct.
Well, we get the calls too, Doctor, and along the lines of that is the consequences. If you were assigned 45 days and you're being released at 10 days or 15 days, who makes that determination? Are you going to be making that determination now, or are you going to be involved in that exit?
I'm already involved. When a situation arose back in December, to kind of try to, get a grasp of what is going on with these early releases, I said, well, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and, before you release them, I'm going to go ahead and sign off on it. Just like I have to sign off for them to go over there. And I don't know, I know that I can't make a decision as far as the placement. All I can do is just review to make sure that it's in line with the discretionary mandatory placement based on Chapter 37. But now I am involved. They'll send me a recommendation for early release. I look at everything, grades, everything, and then we determine that. But if we're going to be very, very specific, then that's something that I have to research, make sure that we're not going to be violating anything because of the policy.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you say they're giving us the flexibility, they're saying, you guys take care of it, it's on you. So, yeah, we can definitely research, and if we can have something local and include some more detailed guidelines in our student code of conduct, so we can go back and tell parents, hey, it's in the student code of conduct, you have to go back in there and read it. It's not coming from me or him or you. It's in the rules, and that'll make it a lot better to understand for everybody.
Yeah, and we can do that so that way and we'll check with TASB on, it could even be a board regulation. Most school districts, I did a random sampling, don't have, they just have the legal portion of this policy. Austin ISD does have a board regulation that stipulates like no probated removals when it's a mandatory placement. So it would be a board regulation, but we'll verify that with TASB.
Right, and I'll compare student code of conducts with other districts and see how they have it set up as well.
Yeah.
So,
And one thing that I just
Definitely.
kind of want to say that's always been in my mind, I know that's important to check with other people, but I've always been in my mind, it doesn't matter what other people are doing. We're going to do what we need to do for our community. Whether 1,000 other districts do it or one other district does it or no one does it, whatever we need to do, we can do it.
That's true. The ironic thing, though, is that TASB checks with other districts. Whenever we verify, whenever we're getting language, a draft, a crafting of a certain item or whatever, they check what districts and so we just do it just as to provide additional knowledge, to build our knowledge. We don't do it to say, hey, because we know we're WESCO. We're WESCO and we do the WESCO way, right? But for us, it's just to gain personal and professional knowledge of other districts.
TASB might come back to us and use us as an example. You never know.
Yeah, so
So I'll
it's just for
provide
us
you-
to grow.
Yeah.
I can provide some information on the board update on that, Mr.
Okay.
Staita. Thank you.
Thank you so much for looking into it. Appreciate it.
And Doctor, since we're talking about DAP, obviously I was there for a semester as a teacher, and I don't know if it would fall along this line here, anywhere in here, but just the repeat offenders. It seems like they don't go and stay away. They go and come back and then come back again, and there's a concern there that needs to be, that we need to pay attention to and address as well.
And we are. Thank you, Mr. Trevino. Yes, we do that. And it's very interesting when I get a request for placement. I look at the name and say, okay, this name sounds very familiar, and I'll go back to my log, and yep, they've already been there. Doesn't happen that often, but yes, it happens. Especially the discretionary students, the misbehavior, the skipping, things like that. Usually with the drugs, it doesn't happen. The recidivism is not as, as high when it comes to drugs, so.
No, I was there that semester, and unfortunately, some of those kids, a lot, I mean,
Yeah.
out of the 20 kids that I had in my classroom, I'd say about a third of them ended up coming back, which is too many, during that same
Right.
semester. So
Yeah,
and most of them were for the same problem. So,
A possible resolution for that would be district implementation with fidelity on restorative practices. That's what the research shows, that restorative practices built in, implemented in a district will provide some type of relief from having the repeat misconduct. And I know that the district, Weslaco ISD, has implemented, but it's just a matter of implementing it with fidelity.
Yeah, I think, and again, Ms. Ustaita, Mr. Trevino, it's well taken, I totally understand what you're saying. I think a lot of times what happens is that principals, even the middle schools, I don't know if they're on, I don't think so, but a lot of times what they want to do is they want to get the kids back, But number one, they've been out for a long time, so it's like, okay, you know what? Let's just teach them a lesson and send them there for 20 days for the discretionary. But within 10, 15 days, let's get them back because, they're already missing out a lot of instruction. But as far as those cases where they could be punishable as felonies, okay, I understand, that's a little bit more severe. So a lot of times they want to get some of these kids back, so that they can, continue to get an education, so it's.
One more question now that we're on the disciplinary. I was told to ask a couple of weeks ago, I've forgotten. Are we having ISS in schools right now, or did we not do that this year?
Yes.
Because I was told we weren't.
Yes, so.
We are? Okay.
From what I understand, there's only one campus that doesn't have it.
Oh, okay.
And I've recommended that, the principal, it's up to the principal, so.
Okay.
But yes, so what we do is in the chart that I told you about, the chapter 37, it'll tell you the infraction, and it tells you, you can do this, this, or this, okay? If it's discretionary, first thing that you can do is, of course, meet with the parents, detention, ISS, and then as it gets, as they continue to repeat the infractions, then they start to do OSS, 3 days OSS, out of school suspension. Sometimes they bring in the parents to shadow the kids, and then the very last thing they recommend is the placement.
Okay. All right.
But we'll look into it, definitely.
Sounds good.
Okay, the next policy for review is CH Local Purchasing and Acquisition. And that is the, specifically with an example of, PSJA's ISD's Code of Silence. And this is Ustaita, you.
Yes, I saw that you put it in the green.
Everybody has a copy
yes.
of-
So in our green, Dr. Valdez, in our green folder, I asked her if she could give us a copy of PSJA's policy, their local policy, and then ours too, because I know that the audit that we had in response to the audit, there was a lot of conflict of interest, points to be made. So as I was going through different districts' policies as part of my assignments in class, I noticed that only PSJA, I don't think anybody else in the valley, but PSJA did have this code of silence in the purchasing and acquisition policy, and I started reading it, and I just thought, wow, this would really curtail a lot of the, not doubts, but a lot of the things that we talk about, the issues that we have here, the way that PSJA has their policy set up, it makes sense. I mean, it's really specific about vendor relationships, conflicts of interest. You guys can read through it later, right? But this is the reason why I told Dr. Valdez, maybe we can look into this. and talk about if we would want to add something like this to our policy to, like a
Yes,
corrective action plan with what we saw in the audit and the
Yes.
issues that were brought up.
And it is, right, it's an option that you have to include it in local. Where we have it is obviously in the documents, right? So for example, I provided a sample of an RFP, this one specifically for athletic supplies and equipment. And there's a paragraph that's highlighted and says, further, I affirm that after the opening of this proposal, I or any representative of my company will not discuss the contents of this proposal with any person affiliated with Weslaco ISD other than the purchasing director or his designee. Prior to the awarding of this proposal, I understand that failure to observe this procedure may cause my proposal to be rejected. So it's in every RFQ or RFP, but like you said, Mrs. Staita, if you want to put it into local policy, you could.
I just thought it was a good idea to have a policy, but we can talk about it later and, if we want to.
Yes, and if there's
Add
any revisions or that you want to make to policy, we'll note it, and then we can bring it forward to y'all for
Next.
board consideration.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now we can.
You would just let us know if you want to include,
Okay.
okay.
And yeah, I would, if the board members can go home and just read through it and see what you think about it, and if it would benefit us to have in our policy, and then we can discuss it next time.
Yes. And we'll surely bring it forward for
Okay.
y'all, for consideration of your approval. The next one is DCE Local Employment Practices, Other Types of Contracts, and this one references non-Chapter 21 contracts. So I did list on there that non-Chapter 21 positions can be noted in the WISD compensation plan, and that's the 200 pay family. So if you look in the compensation plan, it's listed in the 200 pay family. Or we can provide the board a separate list for your approval. So it's your wishes, however you want us to proceed, whether you want us to note it on the compensation plan that it's, that these are the non-Chapter 21, or when we bring forward contracts, if you want a separate list, just so it's listed. So it's up to you how you would like for us to present that to you.
I think after having the TASB salary study would also help us to really understand. And I don't know when this list of non-Chapter 21 was last looked at or made, this list approved by the board. I remember asking Dr. Canales, where's the list of the board approved positions? And she just couldn't find it. She said, I don't know where it is.
No, it's always the 200 pay
Yep.
family.
Okay,
They're administrators who are non-instructional, and that's the 200 pay family.
okay.
Uh-huh.
So then, I don't know when the last time was that the board revised it. Do you know when was the last time?
It's anytime we review the compensation plan. So I have HR here.
You can.
Yeah.
When so basically when this question had come up and we've discussed it, so we looked at it, when contracts were presented last April, you get basically a list comes out or a memo comes out and it says the following positions. And then it'll say, basically, for example, it'll give you a pay grade, it'll give you the individual, then it'll say either professional or non-professional. If it says non-professional, basically all that's saying is that's the non-Chapter 21. What we're looking at and what Dr. Valdez is mentioning to you all is what we can do is when we bring that and present it forward, what we can do is break it down and delineate it a little more, right? So these are going to be the non-professional or non-Chapter 21 positions. These are the Chapter 21 positions that you go. So you have,
Instead of having
a lot of
it
times it's
all
listed,
one.
because a lot of times when you get it, it just says listed as key personnel.
Right.
Right? So you'll see key personnel, and then it'll be listed as principals. And then you'd have those at central office, right? So what we can do is break that down and delineate it a little more, so you can see exactly which ones are non-Chapter 1, which ones are Chapter 21.
And I mean, I know who Chapter 21 and non-Chapter certified or not certified, but my thing is, the key word here is contracts. Because we don't have to give a contract to a non-Chapter 21 employee, right? They can be either at will or term. Only people who are certified get a contract later on. So that was my concern with this policy here, because I don't know who we're giving contracts to.
So I think if I can understand what exactly you're saying is, position X should be non-chapter 21. Position Y should be a chapter 21, and designate exactly what those positions are and if they are a professional or non-professional contract, I believe is what you're trying to say.
And what type of, yeah,
Yes.
right, what type of, is it contract, is it at will? Yes.
So we can create a spreadsheet
Sheet.
that'll list
Mhm.
the particular position or person, and then the chapter 21, non-chapter
Right.
21, and then the type of contract. So we can do that, we can provide a list, like an official list.
I think that's,
Okay. You'll note that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next policy for review is DHC Legal, Employee Standards of Conduct. And this one is on the reporting to Texas Education Agency. And
Sorry.
so this went into effect September 1, 2019, when a principal or a superintendent learns of someone's resignation or termination because of misconduct. We have 7 days to submit the misconduct report to TEA, and it gets sent to the Commissioner of Education. So that's in accordance with Texas Education Code Chapter 22.093. And so we have to, right? Otherwise, there are sanctions. A superintendent can face, sanctions to his or her certification and so forth, right? So by law, we have to submit that report of misconduct.
And the,
Normally, a principal will submit that as soon as he can, depending on the situation, notifies the superintendent right away.
the key, and the key here isn't the timeline. It's not about 7 days. I brought this up because of principals contacting the superintendent. My concern wasn't with the 7 days at all. I understand there's 7 days. My concern is, who are we going to notify when we have a problem? Are we going to the superintendent? Are we going to HR? Are we going to Andres? Who are we going to? When we have a big problem, for example, what happened in the news, a couple of months ago, which I don't even want to think about, but what you read out there in the public and in the newspaper, I want to make sure that we all understand that the person that the principals notify is the superintendent. That's the first person that we notify. Yes, there's a chain, of course, there's always a chain of command, but for something that's very serious, the superintendent is the one that principals notify, not HR, not anybody else. That's what I want you to, that's why I brought this policy over to you. It wasn't so much it wasn't the 7 days, it was notifying the superintendent.
Oh, okay. Well, you provided this policy, you referenced this policy, that's why I was
Yeah, and I
noting that
highlighted
policy.
principals notify superintendents.
Yes, and that specific policy references if there's a termination or resignation, so that's what that is. What you're referencing is the administration's execution and implementation on a response protocol.
Yes.
That's what you're referencing. Right, so that's it. That's at the superintendent designee's discretion on the how, right? On how we implement the policies. So, really, the protocol is they contact their immediate supervisor. And then, for example, in a case where a principal knows that an administrative investigation is going to ensue, step 1 in the administrative investigation framework for WISD, step 1 is to contact HR. In any particular severe case where we know that employees may face administrative leave with or without pay, pending the outcome of the investigation, step 1 here is to contact HR. And that's why we have HR directors, because they're going to go out into the field to assist the principal in the investigation. The notification, yes, can go directly to the superintendent. In the specific case that you're referencing, I was told 65 minutes afterwards. At the time in reflecting, I was meeting, it was on a Wednesday, we had board planning, I was meeting with Coach Guer. Coach Guer was in my office, Doralisa Zavala was standing outside by my secretary's area to inform me within minutes that principal had already contacted the office to send her over there. So we were in behind closed doors meeting. But yes, we will communicate with principals, whether through a phone call, through text, through email. If it's severe, that's our call, right? We'll train the principals on to reach out to us, absolutely. But of course, it also, it can be through text, it can be a phone call, it can be, probably those two would be the quickest to get a hold of us. So Abel Aguilar will, and I will get with the principals as far as the communication piece of it. But we're always in the loop of everything. The principals are really good about communicating everything to us that they believe we should know about. Any threats, any potential violence, any misconduct by employees. The principals are excellent at communicating with us. We're always in the know. And so that's just a determination by the district on the how it'll be implemented. But surely we'll communicate that with the principals that
And normally,
reach out to us.
as a former principal, if I contacted the superintendent and say that the superintendent was in a planning meeting, then the next step would be, okay, who is responsible for this particular situation? And the majority of the time, it's HR.
Yes.
There's some other times it could be something else, but the majority of the time, and as soon as you can contact the superintendent, you do. As a principal, you do.
Right.
That's just common practice.
You do. And sometimes superintendents are behind closed doors meeting with,
Right.
whether it's an employee, whether it's board president, whether it's, in this case, it was the board president. But yes, we will clearly communicate that with principals to reach out to myself or whoever sits in the seat and Mr. Aguilar. And whomever their immediate supervisor may be at the time. The next policy is DK local assignment and schedules. And this one was in reference to, I believe, the travel allowance.
Correct.
This section of DK local supplemental duties, that's like extra duty pay. If an employee participates as a UIL academics coach, UIL fine arts, for example, band directors, choir, all the positions involved with UIL fine arts and as well as UIL athletics, any clubs, organizations, their club sponsors, those are all supplemental duties. The question was on the travel allowance, right? I think some people think that it's like a stipend, but it's not. So these are stipends go along with the supplemental duties. So the travel stipend, the travel allowance is not supplemental duty pay. The travel allowance is part of the district's contractual obligation to the employee. It is part of the employee's compensation. The travel allowance will be reviewed by the Board of Trustees prior to the approval of the 22-23 WISD compensation plan. And currently, right now, it is under specific review with TASB. And so administration will come forward. It'll be your call, your decision on how much and who gets it and so forth. So that's going to come before you, and TASB is studying it.
Okay.
Dr. Ardes, when did you say the TASB study would be ready?
Gosh,
I thought they said sometime in May.
May.
Coming up.
I want to say it's May. In May, and compensation plan is probably, the goal is to bring it in that May board meeting.
So it is, it's in the regular May
Regular
board meeting
board-
that we're
right.
hoping to bring forward the compensation plan when the budget is brought forward as well. And TASB has scheduled a workshop with you all in early May as well,
To be here, they'll be presenting the
to
information.
go over the findings of the report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One final note, we're hoping they'll present in conjunction, which is the staffing and the salary together with you all.
Thank you. And the last one is FNA Local, Student Rights and Responsibilities, Student Expression. And this one was in particular with the, on the students who participate in graduation ceremonies.
Oh, the reason I brought this up, because we were talking about student expression. I had no idea about a limited public forum, just a regular public forum. There's been a lot of legal cases on this, how students want to express themselves, what they can, what they can't say. And last year, I had Dr. Gamboa is here, and I had no idea. And when I saw this, I said, oh my gosh, I didn't know, and I don't know if Dr. Gamboa and you eat also. We had a student who wanted to talk at graduation, and it was the first year, I believe it was the first year that the seniors were out the whole year, didn't get to talk to their whole class. And this senior, he was a student council president, Mr. Weslaco, top 20, and a leader. This was a leader at his school. And he said, I really want to give a speech. And I said, well, talk to the principal, go talk to him. But there's already routines and whatever we haven't, placed already for our graduation speeches. So his student was told, no, I'm sorry, there was already people who are assigned to do the speech. But when I saw this policy, and we were talking about it in my legal class, how a limited public forum, and I think that's what it is here, there's criteria that the students can, if they meet certain criteria, they can speak at graduation events with this limited public forum. So this is why I brought it up, and I said, wow, I had no idea. And I just brought it up just for our reference, because if it happens or, something, and you have another student who comes up and says, can I please speak? If you meet the criteria and you are volunteering, then yes, you can use it as a limited public forum. But this is the reason why I brought this, because I had no idea it even existed. So that's why I brought it up. It's just something out of the box that we're not used to.
I think the high school principals would attest to this. They wish they could fit in as many
Yeah.
of our graduating seniors to be able, that are eligible, right? To
Right.
participate in commencement exercises. It's just for the time, right? There's a time limit and.
Right.
And so, I would say it's, talking to the high school principals is really like tradition. Wasco High has of course, they have NHS president, they have the third ranking student, of course, valedictorian, salutatorian, and so it's really been tradition, right? I know I spoke to Dr. Gamboa, and Dr. Gamboa says, I'll ask for volunteers, and that particular year, he had plenty already that had. We wish that we could accommodate all.
And actually, it was supposed to be class president, and I remember because it was my daughter's school, but it wasn't the class president, it was the vice president, I think, that did it.
Yeah.
So the class, you can.
Yes.
But it does say here, only student council officers, class officers, that's it, of the graduating class. Nobody else.
It does go, I do have that paragraph, the excerpt there, where it does stipulate that it can be, specifically for graduation. I don't know if
It's
you
right
have
there.
it there in your, where it says the others that can participate include NHS, third ranking student. I don't have it, I can't see it in front of me, but there's an additional list.
Yeah, it's not here.
It's not in that one?
No,
Okay.
it just says.
Yes, there
student
are
council, but class
additional
officers.
listed that can participate.
Oh, okay.
And Dr. Gamboa is
Yeah,
here, he
and
can
the
fill
way
you
it
in.
works, I do know. And the way it works is that pretty much the way we do it, at least, and like Ms. Dr. Valdez was saying, Wesco has their traditions, we have our traditions. And the way we usually do it is that we usually give the opportunity for the senior class officers to get the opportunity to go up there and speak. In this particular situation that we're talking about, the class president was also the salutatorian. You know what I mean? So the vice president took that role and responsibility. Now, we usually, if a student wants to speak, if they give us ample time, we usually try to fit him into the program. But in this particular situation, it was one of those things where the program was already set, You know what I mean? And it was going to be one of those things that somebody would either have to be stepping out because of the nature of the speech that he wanted to give. It was a closing ceremony. Traditionally, the president is the one that closes the ceremony as they're giving a speech to the class, and then they close out the ceremony, which is why we decided to move forward as far as the speeches and the program that was actually set in place.
Let me tell you something, just stuck in my brain, that graduations this last year, the smallest, I think it's the smallest high school, I don't know if it's CTE, the smallest one out of all the high schools. I think their graduation was the longest of all the high schools, even though they were the smallest high
Correct,
school.
correct.
Because they, they talked and talked. So do we have we're not gonna have every single kid talk, of
Correct.
course not. But there's no set, it has to be an hour and a half and that's it, we're done.
Correct.
Everybody has, you have the flexibility.
Correct.
And you have the flexibility as the principal to do, for what
Correct.
you think is fair for your campus. But the leadership that we want to build and that we want to promote in our kids, we have that.
Correct.
And I just felt like we were shutting that leadership off. So I just want to promote, that's what we're all
Correct.
about, the leader in me. And hey, you want to, this is coming from your heart to do it, do it. It's okay to step out of the box sometimes a
Correct.
little bit. And yes, it's tradition, but you know what? Things change, and tradition, you just refine it, and
Correct.
it's still tradition. But I just wanted to bring this policy up, because now that opened our eyes to,
Correct.
okay, now we know.
See, and now that brings up also different practices that we can also implement while in the classroom, while the year is going on, so that we can go ahead and try to give, like you said, the forum to the kids that want to speak, and if it's to the point to where it's so many, we can limit the
Yeah.
number of
Yeah, it's limited.
Correct. Limited number
And
of
I don't know,
minutes.
a lot of them would want to speak publicly, but.
Not everybody can go up there and
Yeah,
actually speak.
no, I
so,
think but it's a good idea, just to promote that. But all right, thank you.
Thank you. Well, this concludes the board workshop and the review of the policies. Again, if the board wants us to proceed with any changes to local, just let Mr. Cuellar know, and we'll proceed as needed to. And this concludes our presentation. Thank you, team.
Thank you.
Okay, before we adjourn, let the record reflect that Coach Eje Trevino joined the workshop at 5:47. Dr. Jaime Rodriguez joined the workshop at 6:01.
It's a mess at 7:30.
And Mr. Andrew Gonzalez joined the workshop at 6:29. Item 5, adjournment.
I'll try to make a mess right now. So moved.
So moved, we have it. So the time now is 6:38, and we are adjourned from the workshop. Okay, do we want to take a very short break before we get into the next item? Anybody? Okay, I'll just go to the restroom real quick. Beat you guys there.
It's gonna be close, but it's just.
Good evening. I'm Armando Cuellar, President of the Weslaco ISD Board of Trustees. This special board meeting is being conducted pursuant to the Open Meetings Act. Notice of this meeting has been posted online for at least 72 hours. The board is meeting by the use of Google Meets and telephone transmission, which allows two-way communication for members of the public during public comments. A recording of this meeting is being made and will be available to the public at a later date. The time now is 6:44, and I call this meeting to order. I'll now begin the roll call. Call each board member by name. Signify your presence by saying here or present. Mr. Nieto.
Present.
Mr. Statham.
Present?
Los Trevino.
Present.
Dr. Rodriguez.
Present.
Mr. Mark de los Santos. Mr. Andrew Gonzalez.
Present.
Let the record show that a quorum of board members are in attendance. Item 3, public comments. We have one.
There's one.
Okay. Come forward. State your name and give your address.
First of all, Happy New Year to every single one of you. I haven't been given the privilege to say that, especially to you, Mr. Board President, since you know you go way back with my family. First of all, my name is Mr. Edward Mejia, as every single one of you all know. My
Okay.
address is here.
Once you give your address, then I need to read the formality.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And then
Who
you
knows
will
better
have
than I do? Go ahead.
You will have the floor. Thank you. Okay, pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act, the Board of Trustees may not deliberate on any comment made by a member of the public on a subject that is not included on the agenda, posted with notice of this meeting. As per the Texas Attorney General, the scope of board discussion for a subject not part of the meeting agenda is limited to only a proposal by a board member to place the subject on a future board agenda. Specific factual information or recitation of existing policy may be furnished in response to inquiries, but the board shall not deliberate or decide regarding any subject that is not included on the agenda posted with notice of this meeting. Audience participation at a board meeting is limited to the portion of the meeting designated for that purpose. At all other times during a board meeting, the audience shall not enter into discussion or debate on matters being considered by the board, unless recognized by the presiding officer. No public comment presentation shall exceed 5 minutes. Any disruptive behavior by any speaker may result in the speaker's removal from participation in the meeting. Please be mindful of using names or personally identifiable information, as there is no immunity from defamatory comments while participating in public comments. You may now proceed. You have the floor.
First of all, as I was trying to finish, my address is here at 721 East Torito Street, here in Weslaco. First and foremost, and I'm not going to take up the whole 5 minutes because I don't think I need to, but I'm just going to address, and I know your upcoming items are on grievances, so I want to come in front of you all to say that I'm very irate and disgusted on the level of behavior that some people on the board have done to myself and prevented me from coming forward to attend the meetings, and it's ridiculous in nature. I was served the last time with a criminal trespass warning, as you can see here, and today I was prevented from coming in just because of my political background and who I support. That should not have any bearing on what goes on in this society, because y'all were censoring what I need to believe in, what I believe in, and that's coming to these meetings publicly. These meetings are for the public and not for one individual in itself. And I feel like y'all have been violating me since day one, since I was served with that ridiculous notice weeks ago. I'm also wanting to have a grievance with the superintendent, and she has failed to return her phone calls to me. And I'm here asking for the same attention that y'all give the same person, whether it was Edward Mejia or Joe Blow Nobody. And I've been trying to get that for weeks upon weeks, and I have not been given the attention because, of course, we just went through a heated district attorney race, which, of course, I was a part of. But that being aside, I mean, I just want the same level of attention that you all would give the next person next in line, if it was me or not. And I have not been given that, and that's not right. So I want to hear from someone from this board or the district and be granted a grievance, because I have much to say on the level of treatment I've been given by you, the representatives of this district, that we, the people, elect. Those are not your seats, they belong to the people. And the fact how you all have been using it against me for political retaliation, it's not right. And it's about time that the truth comes out. And I'm here today just to voice my concerns and the way I feel, because I'm not gonna tolerate it, I'm not. Enough is enough. To be throwing the police on you is one thing with no bearing whatsoever. So I expect to be given the same level of treatment as anybody would be versus if it was me or not. That's all I'm requesting. And I hope to hear from somebody soon, because this is getting out of hand. I was blocked from coming in here earlier because of the fact that the guard mentioned that the order came from the superintendent to block me from coming in, and that there was a criminal trespass / restraining order against me currently in play, which thank you that I got that cleared. If not, wouldn't be here standing in front of y'all asking for y'all to assist me in these matters, because it's not right. It's not right, and I should not be treated such just because I don't agree with certain people on the board's political backings, and they're using that as their personal toy against me. So with that being said, I demand and I expect to be given a meeting and a grievance hearing with the superintendent before her departure, because of the fact I know that y'all are also looking and recruiting a superintendent as well. And I really hope to be hearing. I called their office, and I don't know what happens there, but I haven't given a follow-up phone call, and it takes this to come in front of y'all. I mean, I shouldn't have to do this, and I shouldn't have to be ridiculed in the parking lot with threats of being put in handcuffs either. And if it wasn't for your school board attorney getting the call, I would probably not be in here today getting the opportunity to speak. So with that being said, I'm gonna wait for my follow-up appointment, my meeting with your superintendent, and I expect to be heard thoroughly and be given the respect that each individual coming before y'all with their concerns and comments would be given. That's all I'm asking, and I expect to be given that opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Board President and Madam Superintendent. It's good to see y'all again. I hope to hear from y'all soon. I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Item 4. Close the meeting to conduct a Level 3 grievance requested by J. Campos pursuant to policy DGBA local. Dr. Valdez? He wants this to be done in open meeting? Okay. Today is Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022. It is now 6:52 p.m. and we are here in the boardroom in open session at the Weslaco ISD Central Administration Office Building for the purpose of conducting a Level 3 complaint hearing requested by Joe Michael Campos Sr. pursuant to Weslaco ISD policy DGBA local. My name is Armando Cuellar, President of the Board of Trustees, and I am going to be acting as the presiding officer of this hearing. I will conduct this hearing, and I will be the final decision maker regarding the procedures today. The members of the Board of Trustees will be the decision maker on the grievance. The attorney representing the board at this hearing is Mr. Eloy Sepulveda. Let me announce that an official record of these proceedings this evening is being made by audio recording. Those Weslaco ISD board members present for this hearing are Mr. Isidoro Nieto, Mrs. Jackie Sustaita, Jesse Trevino, Dr. Jaime Rodriguez, and Mr. Andrew Gonzalez. Board members sit as a panel of judges. Board members may ask clarifying questions of the parties after the presentations. For the record, the board previously convened in an open meeting and announced that a closed meeting would be held to hear the grievance. In this case, it is open. I'll now cover some basic rules applicable to the hearing. A, because of the recording, only one person talks at a time, no interruptions. B, objections shall be addressed to me for my decision. The attorneys and parties are not to argue with each other. C, any disruptive behavior by any member of this room will result in his or her expulsion from the hearing. Whether I give any warning is in my discretion. D, the hearing participants should conduct themselves with common courtesy and respect for the rights of others. E, this is not an evidentiary hearing, and I will make procedural rulings to the best of my ability. There will be no questioning of the board or any witnesses during tonight's presentation. I will now instruct the parties regarding the procedures to be followed during this hearing. Each side shall have an opportunity to make initial presentations, which shall be limited to 10 minutes each. The following will be the order of the procedure. Grievance presentation. This may be done by the grievant or his advocate. This presentation shall include a clear statement of the complaint, the remedy sought, and the reasons and evidence in support of that position. Administration's presentation. This may be done by the administration or their advocate. This presentation shall include a clear statement of the administration's position with regard to the grievance complaint and reasons and evidence in support of that position. And finally, the rebuttal or closing. This is an opportunity for the grievant first, then administration to address the position of the other party and make a closing statement. This time will be limited to 5 minutes. All questions of procedure should be directed to me for decision. All parties in attendance, other than the board and the board's counsel, need to identify themselves for the record. If any party is a licensed attorney, please indicate so during your introduction. Will the people present for the grievance side please identify themselves and their role, title, and position? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Campos. And will the people present for the administration side please identify themselves and their role, title, and position?
Sergio Garcia, I was the level 2 hearing officer.
As part of the record of his level 3 grievance, the superintendent has supplied each board member with copies of the grievance record. The official record of his grievance shall be comprised of the following. First, the recording of this level 3 hearing. 2, the documentation related to this grievance which has been supplied to the board and all parties. And 3, Weslaco ISD Board Policy DGBA legal and local. If there are any objections to the record, I will consider them at this time. None? Any questions? Grievant, you may now make your presentation. You have 10 minutes. At the 9-minute mark, Costa Rica will let you know that you have a minute left.
I don't know what to say except for my original grievance has all the information in there. The packet I received, it looked as if some of it was missing, but I'm pretty sure it's a long list, so you guys have all the information, sorry. I really have nothing else to add. It's all there, and this is just, I don't know, it's just, you read what's on there, and I really have nothing else to say. This is just a little more than it should have been. And I'm sorry I'm taking up all your time. It shouldn't have gotten to this level. It should have been taken care of there as maybe a small write-up or something, but it's just been blown out of proportion. Just look at everything that's in the package. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Campos. The administration may now make its presentation. We have 10 minutes, 9 minutes. At the 1 minute mark, we'll be notified that that's what we have left.
Thank you. Just a brief presentation, Mr. Campos. In his level 1 grievance, the specific remedy he sought is reinstatement. His complaint is that he was terminated off of a verbal coaching from February without any written or nor verbal write-up prior nor after. I believe you all have been given a copy of his employee file, and in that file there are several written reprimands where Mr. Campos signifies that he did receive them, did go over and review those reprimands, and that was signified by his signature on each of those. The first written reprimand was given to him on September 2nd of 2020 for sleeping. The second written reprimand was due to unexcused absences, and that one was several weeks later on September 18th of 2020. The third written reprimand was for failing to disclose outside employment. There was a warning letter and a job growth plan that was referenced in the grievance, in the initial grievance, that was signed by Mr. Campos on February 12th of 2021. There was another written reprimand that he signed for failure of directives because there was continued violations for not wearing his uniform and keeping the doors unlocked, and that was on April 21st of 2021. And he was terminated on July 1st of 2021. Based off of these written write-ups by his supervisors, and even being placed on a job growth plan where he continued to experience issues and failure to follow directives, that was the basis for his termination on July 1st, 2021.
We now will have a rebuttal or closing. Mr. Campos, you may make your rebuttal. Your closing statements, you have 5 minutes.
Again, like I started before, when I saw the package, I didn't think that was the full package because it's very incomplete. I know you all are familiar with Melissa Escalon. She was in charge of it before. First of all, when I first started, I advised her that I was a police officer and that I do have another job, but this was going to be the priority. I've been a police officer since 2008. When I was interviewed in 2013 here, it was openly disclosed that I was a police officer. Her being a constable knew that I had employment as a police officer in the Ed Couch Police Department. All right, I am still a police officer with the Ed Couch Police Department as a reserve officer. Only because y'all schedule the way she would schedule me sporadically, it was impossible to keep this employment and that employment at the same time. Reserve officer is not a paid officer anymore. I go in to help as an auxiliary officer. Big pay cut, only to keep this employment. Now, she would sporadically, again, change my schedule. I was at this school, I was at that school. Last, I stayed assigned to South Palm Gardens as a public safety officer. They drop in students, the amount of students they have there, to the point where they have like 1 or 2. So there's no, like if they can use me somewhere else, they would. On many occasions, I would deliver packages to you, gentlemen, because they would use me as the rover. Again, sporadic scheduling, understood. Sometimes it came about to where she changed the schedule, forgot to advise me, I wouldn't come in, and I would tell her I didn't know. David Montemayor can attest to that, because I thought you guys had the whole package. Now all of her write-ups, those 3 write-ups that she mentioned, were by her. because one day she scheduled me, she really needed me to come in, but she didn't advise. So then she tried writing me up for that, and the other two, sleeping. They had added cameras onto the units because I was acting as a rover to her. Right before I took my nap, I did say, I am going on my lunch break. That's it, and I spoke to the camera. Didn't think I had to, but I just tried backing myself up. Sure enough, she took an excerpt a couple of minutes later from that and tried writing me up for being asleep in the unit during my lunch break. Didn't know, again, maybe I was trespassing on the vehicle or not. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be sarcastic, but I didn't know that was a no-no. But again, she tried writing me up for that. Now, she was still pissed off for both of those things. Pardon my language if it's inappropriate or whatever, but she then tried writing me up for being a police officer on the side as a side job and not advising. It comes out in my interview on 2013. Ms. Wells, she asked me as a police officer, will I overstep my grounds or allow the administrator to do what they do? And I go, hey, you guys do what you do. I'll back your play. I'm an employee. You're in charge of the school. And it's in there. So if you guys look at that, 2013 during my interview, speak to Ms. Wells, everybody knew that I was a police officer. Her as a constable, I worked alongside her as a police officer on side gigs. So these three things, I rebutted. I did a grievance on that, and that was taken care of. But for it to be small, minute things taken out of there, it's sad. They're taking it out of context to show that I'm a repeated offender of certain things. The only thing I'm guilty of is trying to just question, not even officially demand anything. But when I started at East, because they moved me around, I was helping as an auxiliary officer for Melissa. She tried forcing me to go to nights, and I told her I can't go to nights. If you had all the paperwork, you'll see what she's done. And she's no longer with us for all the misuse of authority that she's done. But I'm not trying to put her down or anything, and I didn't want to bring it out here in this case right now. But unfortunately, you guys don't have the full story, and they want to take minute parts of it. All right? There's a lot more stuff that's very emotional that's happened to me. I lost a wife because of my scheduling. All right, there's a lot of stuff that's happened because of her. And she knew that I didn't quote unquote get along there at East only because of the policies they have there. There's a closed door and policies there. All right, they have permits for students. They don't enforce that. Kids are doing donuts in the middle of the damn parking lot. They tell me to turn away and go to the other side of the school.
So
All right?
you have 30 seconds.
Well, again, if you guys have all the paperwork, if you guys look at everything, you'll know. Guard check does not work. Now you guys replaced it, thank God. I was drenched in sweat. I took off one of my shirts because I was drenched in sweat. Later on spoke with David, hey, I'm sorry I did that. I'll bring 2 shirts. Once I drench one, I'll switch it out, let the other one dry up, and I'll wear this one. Again, not defiance to the uniform, but the conditions there, they're sad. And with the closed door policy, this is all in retaliation to that.
That's it. Time's up, sir.
All right, sorry, thank you.
Mr. Campos. The administration may now make its rebuttal presentation and closing statements. Thank you. Do any board members have any questions?
I just want to confirm, you started with us in 2013, or he started with us in 2013?
2013, I believe. I might be mistaken, but I believe it was 2013.
2013, okay.
And I have been an officer since 2008, and I still am a police officer.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Anybody else?
Mr. Campos, can you come up here? So they mentioned the corrective action plan. The corrective action plan or the job growth plan. Did you follow that, or do you still One
Well,
of, one of them,
I
one of
ran
them
out of
was, one of them was, was that the only time with your uniform, or was other times too?
I believe there was 2, maybe 3 times,
Okay.
I don't recall. This plan that you speak of,
Correct.
Mr. Reyna pulled me into the office, he gave me those 2, I rebutted, I told him, look, that time it was because your guard check is not up to par. He was irate by that, but he skipped it. And then he stated that I wasn't locking doors. I just know that was also bringing up.
Correct.
My schedule ends at 7 o'clock in the afternoon. Yet you have custodians there till 9.
Correct.
I check doors. I have no control over what they do after 7. Also, they had me checking extracurricular activities that they had there. That was another rebuttal I had to them about their scheduling. That's after school and athletic and choir, whatever their extracurricular activities, but yet they refuse to have us as regular guards and work that as an extra detail. So his complaint was, you're not over there, you're not over there, you're not over there. I wasn't all over the school. I'm surprised he didn't bring that up as one of the complaints. But supposedly parents didn't see me at the practice yard for the band, but yet they didn't see me in the practice yard for the school for softball. It was various complaints. It was just a retaliation for me asking him, why don't you do this, why don't you do that? And again, to be honest, I didn't even ask him officially. I asked the guards, hey, what's going on here? Why do they do that? Why do they do that? The guards told me, don't take it to them, they're gonna attack you. Sure enough, one of the guards inappropriately texts him all the time, and that's where this came out of. Do I have proof? No, because I have no control over their phones. But I didn't even officially bring it up as a complaint. It was a complaint from another guard to him because of their inappropriate relationship.
Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no, sorry,
No problem.
thanks.
I have one question, sir. You mentioned other write-ups in 2020, is that correct? Because
I'm not sure when her write-ups were. It was in her retaliation to me telling her no, that I can't go to nights.
Okay,
She would have me work during the summer, again, from South Palm to go help her out with various things. I had no problem helping her out. But after a while, she just tried forcing me to go to nights. And I told her I can't go to nights. I'm in charge of 2 daughters. We had the loss of my wife the year before, and I'd just been struggling. But it didn't affect my work. I mean, to know the whole story, you'd be surprised how I'm working here.
okay, all right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Mr. Campos,
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Jim.
you started sometime in 2013. You've been working with the district for 5 to 6 years before the write-up started.
Well,
How was,
well, you see, I've worked east before, a little bit with, right before Dr. Cantu took over, and we bumped heads, but I tried to just stay away from them, and they moved me.
well, okay, well, not even Weslaco East. You've been with WISD from 2013 up until the write-up started in September of 2020?
Yeah.
Any other write-ups during all those years?
You can check my record. That's why I said I was hoping you guys had my whole file. I mean, I might have had a couple of verbals, but it was just, and I don't mean to say this disrespectfully, but some people here, some administrators, you just close door policies. You can't tell them, hey, maybe you shouldn't be doing this. Hey, this is against the law. And we all know it's happened without me airing anybody's dirty laundry, and then there's just some things where I tell them, look, I'm sorry. We just didn't work out, and they moved me to another school. So I'm not gonna lie, there's just some people I didn't work with, but as a police officer, when I go into a situation, if I'm part of the problem, I tell them, hey, let me back off, let another officer take over. Doesn't mean I'm the problem, doesn't mean they're the problem, it's just we didn't work out.
Yes.
And if you look at my record, I have no write-ups. I mean, if you talk to people frankly, they say I'm a hard person to talk to, but I do my job. And in this little, I don't know which statement that he put, I think it was, I'm not sure. They just stated that I was a danger to students throughout these actions, and that's false. I'm still a police officer, I'm no danger to anybody, and yeah, I mean, taking off a wet shirt, I mean, that's a no-no, but I did it for a reason. You guys know all the guard checks have been revamped because they were not up to par. And in the grievance, where they let me go, I know it says that the principal from East did it, but it wasn't. It was Reyna in retaliation to his closed door policy. And again, I have nothing against the guy. I guess he does the things he does, and that's it. You know, I could still work with him. I've been in Ed Couch since 2008, and people know Ed Couch isn't the best place to work. You know, but even then, I have not been arrested for anything. I don't do wrongdoings. You know, and I avoid commissioners that might want me to do what they don't do or whatever. I don't know. And I know this is open, and I just don't want to air out nobody's laundry, but I don't feel that this should have been a termination. I still belong to South Palm Gardens at the time. In fact, when they decided to do this, I was already helping out at Memorial. I wasn't even part of East. I don't even know why they had to do that. So
you're currently employed still by WISD?
well, I'm with Ed Couch Police Department as a police officer, but I'm still reserved. So I'm technically
termination.
unemployed. I'm not making any money right now.
Okay.
And this is, I mean, if you look at everything that happened, it's just an overreaction by somebody who has a closed door policy. And it's sad. Because I was already at Memorial, helping out at Memorial when I received the letter to get terminated.
Okay.
And technically, I was lent to Memorial, and I still belong to South Palm Gardens, waiting for their students to build it again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campos.
Mr. Campos, I just got one question.
Yes, sir.
Your unexcused absences that were in your file in September, was that due to the conflict with your work in ELSA?
No, it was due to my health. There were some times where my sugar was really high, and I called in, but I was scheduled before any administrator was at the school, so they considered that inappropriate or what have you. So, but that was with Reyna. The other one was with Melissa, again, and I rebutted that with the grievance as well. She changed the schedule on me and didn't advise me. I was given the schedule the day after, and I didn't show up at the right time. And in fact, in the write-up, it says that I showed up to work and started cleaning up in the parking area. I mean, I was just helping out. Nobody was there when I showed up. So I just started cleaning up. Then later I found out I wasn't scheduled, so I left. And I came back later on that night. So she's writing me up for cleaning up when I showed up to work at the inappropriate time, I guess.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more? Thank you. The level 3 grievance presentations are now concluded. I will now review with the members of this board the process for reaching a decision in this case. Having heard the level 3 grievance, the board has several options. 1, the board may vote to grant the remedies requested. 2, the board may vote to deny the remedies requested. Or 3, the board may vote to grant in part and or deny in part any or all of the requested remedies. The board shall now consider and deliberate the issues and record before us. When all members of the board have completed considering and deliberating the record, the issues and evidence presented, we will meet again in open session for action, if any, on the matters presented in this hearing. The board will now deliberate in private. We will exit. Time is 7:18. Thank you. The time now is 7:45 PM, and the board has reconvened an open session with regard to the Level 3 grievance requested by Joe Michael Campos Sr. Does any board member have a motion?
Make a motion to table the item?
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Andrew Gonzalez to table the item,
Second?
and a second by Mrs. Jackie Sustaita. Let's take it to a vote. Signify your approval by saying aye when I call your name, or no if you don't approve. Mr. Nieto?
Aye.
Jackie Sustaita?
Aye.
Coach Eddie Trevino?
Aye.
Dr. Jaime Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mr. Andrew Gonzalez?
Aye.
Motion carries to table the item. The time now is 7:46, and we're gonna,
Item 8.
item 8, adjournment.
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn, and the time now is 7:46. We are adjourned.
Her level 3 or